Welcome back. This show explores the possibility that we could have lived before in a past life. So far, we've seen one of the country's best-loved actresses, Denise Welch, take part in a regression session where she appeared to revisit the life of a young woman in 1821 who fell victim to a horrible farming accident.
It's just pressing up my legs.
Can you see any?
The machine.
Machine? What machine's pressing on your legs?
The tractor thing.
So, could our favourite actress Denise be a tennis-playing farm girl in the 19th century, or was it just a creation of her imagination? The experts have their own ideas.
If indeed you have lived a past life, whether it was a good one or a bad one, that memory somehow is still stored in your brain, and it can affect your life, whether it's your relationship, your business, your moods, your anxieties. And by knowing how to solve that problem in the past life can definitely help you in this lifetime.
If you go through a really emotional response to something that you've not dared think about, something you feel guilty about, something you're worried about, somebody you care about, whatever it is, going through an emotional response like that can actually help get rid of difficult feelings, help you resolve problems. The trouble is then, if you believe that that was because of a past life, that it wasn't really, you can get yourself into a tangle of all sorts of unpleasant and difficult ideas.
You are better to identify the problem in the here and now and use direct approaches to restructure your life to cope with that.
In a moment, I'll be asking Denise for her verdict, but first, it's time to see if our journey into the archives has revealed any evidence. After picking his way through the many details of Denise's regression, our historian detective reveals the results of his investigation.
Denise's story is, quite frankly, quite a tricky one. So what did she give us? Well, we've got that name, Jean Harder, on a farm somewhere in the West Country in 1821. And of course, that terrible accident. Not, you might think, a huge amount to go on, but there were one or two clues hidden away. And here is the first one.
And do you know where you all lived? Whereabouts in the world were you?
All.
Do you know the name of the farm?
Teen. T-E-I-G-N.
Now, one of the great things about being an historian is that you get to come and research some of the most wonderful and fantastic details. Now, in my search for Tain Farm, I came here to the National Archives, and that in turn led me to a small record office in Devon, and this is what it gave us. It's a bill of sale for Tain Farm in 1826. So is this the farm that Denise talks about? It's impossible to say for sure, but what else did she tell us?
What are you wearing on your feet, if anything?
White shoes.
And what kind of sports clothes are you wearing?
Long white pants.
So, Jean is wearing long white pants, white shoes, and Denise thinks they're sports clothes. But this just doesn't seem right. Women didn't have trousers like this at the time. Maybe she's talking about the good old-fashioned white knickerbocker. It could be that that's what she's confusing for a sports kit. But what was Jean doing just before the accident?
I was playing.
You were playing? What were you playing?
Playing with my racket.
What is this racket she's talking about? Well, it might be one of these, a good old-fashioned tennis racket, but you wouldn't have found one like this around in the 1820s.
In those days, tennis was largely played indoors by the aristocracy. It was called real tennis. The lawn tennis that we know today didn't officially start until the 1870s, some 50 years later.
But we still have this image of this young, carefree girl playing in a field, a happy old life. But that was about to change.
I ran in front of it. He didn't know that I was there. The machine is
Machine?
pressing up my legs.
This is clearly a terrible accident that crushes Jean's legs. Now, then as now, working on farms was quite a risky business. But let's not forget, we're in the middle of the Industrial and Agricultural Revolution, where new machinery was being developed and placed on farms all the time. So what kind of machine could she be talking about?
What machine's pressing on your legs?
The tractor thing.
Like most kids, I was always fascinated by tractors, but I do know the tractor as we know it doesn't really emerge until after the 1850s, after, of course, the period Denise is talking about. But there were many other horse-drawn implements that could be equally as lethal. Is it one of these that causes the accident Denise tells us of? Well, it could have been a plough, it could even have been a heavy cart. The truth is, we just don't know. Well, I have to admit that the details Denise gives us about Jean Harder's life are, frankly, a little bit difficult. It's possible that she was wearing that clothing and maybe used a tennis racket, and she could well have been injured in a tragic farm accident, but frankly, it is all a bit confusing.
The story would make a lot more sense if it was not the 1820s, but the 1920s.
So is it just simply possible that Denise got the date wrong?
So it's not quite the Tudors and the Stuarts that you were hoping for.
No, it's not. That is so odd.
What did those pictures look like? The pictures that we've recreated there. Were we close to what you saw?
That sort of outfit is very right. The tractor thing I'm confused about, because in my mind it was much more like...
It was mechanical.
It certainly looked, whether or not it had an engine or not, I'm not sure about, but it certainly looked more like the tractor that we know now, which obviously, as he says, is a slightly sort of confusing element to it time-wise.
Is it possible that you might have got the date wrong?
Well, it is possible. I mean, that's obviously the date that, you know, I can't really remember much about saying the date, but obviously that is the date that I said. I remember being really scared when I thought that because then I went into a Denise mode of thinking, I want to come out of this because my legs are paralysed. But I do have a deep-rooted fear of paralysis. So again, it's sort of whether or what came first, the chicken or the egg. I don't know. I mean,
how long have you had the fear of paralysis?
Always. I mean, I would like to think that I did have that life, and that's maybe where that's come from.
Yes. And the outfit itself, you're playing sport. There is a possibility, because real tennis was around at that time, different racket, different rules, normally played by the aristocracy. So there is a possibility that there could be a real tennis connection
because
there.
My friends have said that I'm the most unsporty person in the world, that I wouldn't really know what sports gear looked like in any century, particularly.
But it's fun, which is strange in that case, that primarily, you know, your story and what you've told us was all about sport.
Absolutely,
and all about being outside.
absolutely.
You're not an outdoor sort of person.
I'm not really an outdoor person. I'm certainly not a sporty person.
Is there a possibility that you think that you could have your Jean could have been running around in her knickerbockers? She's basically running around outside in her underwear.
Well, absolutely, and I have been known to do that after a few bevies, I have to say.
The pictures that you had, and we watched you there with Andrea, and it did look like a very traumatic experience. It looked quite upsetting.
It was very upsetting. And you know what, watching it back is quite emotional, because although it's difficult to explain to people who haven't experienced it, the fact that you are all the time, I was sort of, I knew that I was Jean Harder as far as I was concerned, but I was still aware that I was in a room with a crew of maybe eight or 10 people. So it's quite a sort of bizarre experience to watch it back, and it upset me to see how upset I was, because I do remember the fear of losing the use of my legs. But I also knew that Jean didn't die as a result of that accident. I don't know what then happened to her, but I know that she didn't die as a result of that. But it was very frightening, because I honestly felt that I couldn't move my legs.
Everything that you worry about now had come true.
Of course.
Yeah. And the pressure was intense. I mean,
it was intense. It was like 3 grown men were sitting on my legs, and that's when I remember thinking, I want to come out of this now. I was terrified, and I found it really upsetting. So,
was there any aspect of this that's been positive for you?
Well, the whole thing's been positive in that I found it totally fascinating, you know, just as an experiment. But I think that, for me, I'm not a hugely religious person, and I would sort of like to be a bit more. And I think as we get older, that you do become more aware of your own mortality. And I can't bear the thought of losing my mum and dad in this life and thinking that I won't see them again. So in a way, let me get a bit emotional about it. In a way, it's given me something to hold on to, that maybe there is going to be something else.
There's no doubt that situation with your mother and losing your mother there would seem to be your greatest fear and the worst thing that could happen to you in this life. That would be the worst thing that could happen. So does that maybe think that perhaps you were not regressed and that you were accessing some part in your head that actually has played to all your fears,
Possibly.
everything that
Possibly.
you fear the most. And, you
And
dislike the most.
that's okay, but part of me does want it to be real because then I feel more like I'm gonna see everybody again. I don't know. It's interesting.
Thank you for the moment. Let's see what our experts think now, because obviously something has occurred here. But what? You've heard what Denise thinks. It's up to you now to make up your own mind and what you believe. But here's what the experts have to say on it all.
In Denise's case, we can be absolutely certain that what we're dealing with is not a real past life, it's a fantasy. She talks about tractors, she talks about women wearing trousers. Basically, none of these things actually took place in the historical era that she's talking about, so we know it could not possibly be a real past life.
This could almost be metaphors for depression. This is how people feel when they're depressed. They feel lethargic, they feel low, they feel helpless. And I strongly believe that is what she was describing in her regression.
In Denise's past life, something fell on her legs. Now, whether her conscious mind made up the tractor or whether it was something else, what you can't dismiss is the fact that she needed to release that emotion and cut the ties to that and have closure on the emotional aspect, which is what happened.
Well, as we've seen throughout the show, there are many different opinions on this subject. So, Denise, here's the big question. Do you think you've been here before?
Yes. Yes, I do. I believe in it now, and I was very sceptical at first, and I do believe that I've been here before, and I want to go again and have it be regressed privately.
Yeah, without
and I'll let
us.
you know, without you all there.
Thank you, Denise. Right, join us next time for another chance to explore the possibility that we could all have been here before.